in a lot more in depth into the content that we're talking about. But really, this is for accountants and it's for professionals. And what we're looking to do is help guide conversations, things that you want to say, and ways to that. And Carlos is going to go over ways to avoid confrontation, but still value yourself correctly. So, with that being said, this is Carlos Garcia of Reframe Accounting.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm excited to join today. I'm part of Reframe, which is an organization that has a mission to help elevate the accounting profession, rebrand itself before it gets rebranded for us, right? By AI or by any other disrupting technologies that are out there. And one of the ways that we do that is by elevating the professionalism of the accounting professional themselves. We know that communication is a big factor of that. And I'm an exactly what to say certified guide. I've been in the world of sales, communication, and coaching for 15 years. How the heck did I stumble into the world of accounting? Well, some of you might recognize my last name because I am brothers with Hector Garcia, who is a CPA, happens to also be an accounting influencer in YouTube, which sounds strange. If you go to YouTube and type Hector Garcia CPA, you'll see that he's the #1 subject matter expert in all things QuickBooks. But he and I have partnered together to build this foundation called Reframe, where we provide education to the accounting community around helping, again, level up your mindset, your business, your communication, and all things just to help you be successful and do the things that you sign up to be, is help people and make the greatest impact in your world. So today I want to introduce you to well, first of all, something else in case any of you are in the accounting world and looking to be part of a community where you're looking to really level up. We are hosting a specific conference in Miami, Florida this year. It's called Reframe 2025. And the theme is about helping accountants, navigate pricing conversations with confidence, teaching them pricing strategies, but also how to have the conversation, how to speak about value. We have speakers like Ron Baker, who is basically the godfather of all things value pricing. Trisha Browers is a good friend of mine, also exactly what to say certified, and she's a confidence coach. Blair Enns, who is also a thought leader in the space of all things positioning and pricing. And then Hector Garcia, my brother, and myself are hosting this event. It'll be from November 2nd through November 4th. And we have an optional rebranding for accountants event happening on November 5th. So if you'd like more information, you can go to reframe2025.com. You can scan that QR code, but just wanted to do a quick little plug so you just get familiar with our community. Now let's talk a little bit about what today's about. Today, it's going to be about learning exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to make it count. I'm going to introduce you to this methodology, where it came from, and why it's so impactful to know the right words to use in the right moments when you're having those high stakes conversations with your customers. I know many accounting professionals, in my experience, struggle with a lot of different types of conversations, but the most common conversation that I have a lot of people talk about that they struggle with is either a pricing conversation, how to communicate your price to a client so that they could say yes, how to not cave in on your price, right? Because, oftentimes it's hard to know how to price a job, especially there's a lot of unknowns, but then also how to kind of navigate like that scope creep, or how to get your client to do the things you need them to do so you can get the work done. So there's a lot of these awkward things that we run into. We're going to talk about how to use the right language so you can influence people to do the things you want them to do. So it's not just about selling, but it's about building good relationships and influencing, impacting people to be able to make better decisions and working with you so that you can better serve them. We're going to talk about the importance of understanding what critical conversations are, which are moments that exist in your day-to-day world. And if you showed up a lot more prepared to know exactly what to say in those moments, it would have a significant positive impact to the results of your peace of mind, your stress, your anxiety, your nerves, but more importantly, getting the work and the productivity, done better. And also just impact the relationships in a positive way. You don't have to worry about that upcoming conversation that's coming up. You don't have to be anxious about having to tell someone what's going on, or bad news, or saying no to someone, because oftentimes those are the main things that a lot of people struggle with. What are the magic words? Why are they called magic words? So we're going to talk a little bit about the neuroscience of how using a specific sequence of words can have a more rejection-free, create more curiosity, more empathy, and greater connection with the audience that you're speaking with. I'm going to actually give you some phraseology that you can use right now, like literally after this webinar or tomorrow or in your day-to-day practice, and you can start seeing the results right away. And then for those of you who are interested a little bit more around the system, I'll share with you how you can go deeper with this work. But then we'll give Sean a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about how Paychex works and how you can partner with Paychex for those who already work with Paychex, but a good refresher. And for those who don't, it's a good way for you to understand how you can work with these wonderful partners. And then ultimately what happens next. So I want to kind of start with a lot of things that accounting professionals tend to run into is they think about selling. And if you think about the word sales, let's just kind of start there. So if you type in the chat, okay, if I were to tell you stereotypical salesperson, what would be the first word that you think of? If I were to say stereotypical salesperson, what is a word that comes to mind? And Sean, you're welcome to play if you want to type in the chat, but everyone type in the chat one word that you associate with what a stereotypical salesperson means to you, or what is the perception of a stereotypical salesperson, right? So we got pushy, we have aggressive. Let's see if there are any other answers out there. Shady, not honest. You know, maybe someone has an agenda, maybe someone that wants to try to deceive you, someone that wants to do something based on their terms, not really in the benefit of you. Now, if I were to just change that word from stereotypical to professional, what changes for you? A professional salesperson. What word comes to mind for you? Knowledgeable. Sean typed knowledgeable. Sean, change your chat to everyone instead of host and panelists because only I can see your answer. Michael says transparent. Let's see what Diane, Jack, Jeff, Samantha, Cole, Sierra, and Chris has to say. Trustworthy. Thank you. Professional salesperson. So you see, all I did, there's two lessons here. One is that being a salesperson is not a bad thing, but the perception is. The perception of being a salesperson is a bad thing. That's the first lesson. But the second thing is all I did is change one word and you changed all the words, right? I went from stereotypical to professional, but the word salesperson was still in that phrase. So the point here is that when you change your words, you can change your world and you can change other people's worldview. That's why we're going to talk a lot about words today. But I also want to help you break certain paradigms that you might perceive around how we look at sales, how we look at conversations. So what I invite you today is to, if you're willing to be open-minded, is to try to listen to this from a lens of kind of like this is the first time you're learning this. So it's kind of counterintuitive for you to look at this and say, what don't we sell? We don't sell tax prep and filing services. We don't sell financial statement prep. We don't sell bookkeeping services. We don't sell payroll. We don't sell business formation. In your mind, you're like, no, yes, that's what we do sell. These are the services that we sell. We don't sell accounts payable and receivable management. That's kind of a means to an end, right? That's just sort of an output that we're talking about. What I want you to try to shift around what we do sell. What we actually sell is either a feeling or an outcome. A feeling or an outcome. See, because when you shift that perspective and you stop thinking about how many hours this is going to take and how many transactions do they do and how many credit cards do they have and how many bank accounts do they have, and you focus more about how are they feeling about their situation right now? What do they want to feel about their situation after hiring me? Or what results is their current situation giving them? And what results do they want to have after hiring me? That is a lot more valuable to present. And people care more about that than they care about, your ability to be able to do a chart of accounts that looks super clean, or your ability to generate reports and, how all these technical details about X, Y, or Z, because what they care about is the result. And then what they care about is wanting to have that feeling of peace of mind, or the result of saving time, or the result of saving money, or the result of feeling confident in their numbers so they can make the right decisions for their business. So what we actually sell, things that they can measure: tax savings, reduced expenses, increased sales, more profitable activities, time savings, risk mitigation, and things they can feel: peace of mind, the confidence to make quick decisions, becoming a better business person, securing a legacy for their family, the freedom to make an impact in their communities. So that's the first reframe, no pun intended. That's why we're called Reframe. That's the first reframe I invite you to look at when you think about selling. Is you're not selling services, you're selling things you can measure and things that people can feel. The more you shift your language around these words, the more powerful you will be able to position the value of the things that you offer. And in exactly what to say, we have a methodology. If we're going to show up to conversations that we call them the 4 cornerstones of conversational excellence. As of course, we only have an hour to talk about this stuff today, so I'm only going to share one of them today, but it's the most powerful one. And that is that the worst time to think about the thing you're going to say is in the moment you're going to say it. Which means that if you're going to show up to conversations ready to talk about your services or ready to talk about what it is you need your customer to do in order to move forward with your relationship, whether it's agreeing to a new price or agreeing to the fact that you're changing software services or having them sign on to your client portal or getting them to submit the documents you need them to submit, whatever the thing is you need them to do or agree to, you can't just show up and wing it unfiltered, saying what it is that you need to say to them. What this means is we want to show up ready, ready, ready to know exactly what to say in that very moment or exactly what to ask in that very moment so that you can increase your probabilities of getting the outcome that you want out of that conversation. Worst time to think about the thing you're going to say is in the very moment you're going to say it. How many times have you ever left a conversation thinking, shoulda, coulda, woulda? I should have said that differently. I could have probably shown up differently. I would have probably said this instead. I probably would have asked this instead. Right? How many times have you been in a conversation where you ask 2 questions about what they need and then you already think you know the answer and didn't stay curious for long enough to understand the context of their situation? So the takeaway here is understand what are the moments that show up in your world that typically give you resistance, that give you negative outcomes, that make you feel nervous, that make you feel anxious, but they show up on repeat and you know they're going to show up. A client telling you, let me think about it. A client telling me, oh, it's just bookkeeping. A client telling you, oh yeah, I'll get to those documents whenever I can. Like, you know that this shows up over and over and over again, and you keep on doing the same thing and you're not getting the results that you want. As they say, many of you probably have heard this before, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So the new idea that I want to present to you is that what if you took note of those very moments? Like, what are the moments? So the first takeaway I would encourage you to do is to take inventory. What are the moments that show up on repeat for you that continue to give you the bad results, right? Not the outcomes that you're looking for, whether it's a client not accepting the new price, whether it's a client not submitting their documents on time, whether if it's a team member that keeps on dropping the ball on a project and you have to, go in there and fix it yourself, whatever it is, a client that, continuously violates the scope and calls you in after hours and asking you for an extra favor, and you don't know how to say that's out of scope and you got to charge them more for it. Whatever that is, understand what those moments are so that you can prepare what it is that you need to ask or say so you can get the change that you're looking for. Okay. So what I would share with you, if you're a person that likes to take notes or wants to take a screenshot or take a picture of something, I'd probably take this one. We've surveyed hundreds of accountants and I've done workshops on this work multiple times. And what I have found is these are the most common scenarios that show up in the world of accounting professionals that are probably resonate with you all as well. But before I do share with them, I'd like to ask you all to type in the chat, what are the critical conversations that exist in your world? The ones that are hardest for you to have, the one that show up on repeat, yet at the end, even though whatever it is that you say or you do, you still feel, you kind of feel frustrated. You kind of feel like that didn't go the way that I wanted. If you could type it in the chat, what would be that one or two scenarios of existing clients? Maybe if you're trying to sell services, whatever that would look like, go ahead and figure out what are critical conversations that exist inside of your business today that you consider them to be challenging, difficult to have. It doesn't always give you the outcomes or results that you want. And Sean, maybe you can play with me a little bit while we get people to type in the chat a few examples. I'm going to ask you to go off mute, and I'm going to ask you, Sean, in your world as a channel sales solutions consultant, what are the critical conversations that exist in your world when you're speaking with accountants, thinking about, things that don't go your way? I know that you're being vulnerable here, but this
Yeah.
is this is this is what we want to do. We want to build some relationships. So,
So the easy part, right, is going through with accountants what we can offer, going through with them what they're already using. The hard part and the difficult conversation is asking for referrals, asking
mhm.
them, who do you know right now that I could help service? Who do you think I might be able to help service down the line that maybe I can
Is
get
it is it hard to ask, or it's hard to get them to say yes?
in both,
Okay.
both. Um, Now, I mean, it depends on the relationship, right? But that's definitely one of them.
Okay.
And then
Asking for referrals is a critical conversation that is challenging for you. Okay. What else?
asking for referrals, and then I would say, and this happens quite often in doing sales presentations. A lot of times clients will say, is that the best rate you can give me? Or can you give me some type of a discount? And you know it's going to come, you know it's going to happen. And I feel like a lot of times I've shown good value and sometimes it doesn't, but a lot of times it does happen. And almost feel obligated to, yeah, I can give you 5% off or 10% off, but what does that mean in the long run,
Sure.
for sale? So
Yeah. Great. Thank you for being open and willing to kind of share your examples. I have news for you, Sean. Accountants struggle with the same exact two situations: how to ask for referrals and how to have a negotiation if someone, challenges their price or their rate, right? So what I wanted to be able to display here is that the same situations that show up for different industries show up also in accounting, right? The same critical conversations tend to exist. I'm certain, Sean, that you've gotten a call of someone who you onboarded or you handed off to an implementation specialist, and you probably had someone call to complain and say, they haven't called me, or they did it wrong, or they did the migration from payroll company X wrong, and now it's all messed up. And you now have to handle that situation because it wasn't you who did it. You did the handoff, but someone dropped the ball. Would you say that that's familiar?
that happens all the time, every
That's a
day.
critical conversation, right? And that happens too in accounting. If you're doing a bookkeeping cleanup and you're handing it off to a junior bookkeeper and the junior bookkeeper drops the ball, you still have to be representative of your team and try to like pick up the pieces. And now you need to have a difficult conversation with your team member. So what I want to try to share is that these conversations exist across the board in very similar, and industries are not too different. And as I'm reading the chat here, because we wanted to stall a little bit so we can get some ideas from our friends here who are joining us. Jeff says terminating clients. That's never easy, right? How do you have what's called an offboard conversation, or like essentially a disengagement, sending them a disengagement letter? Or if you have an hourly rate and the client exceeds their retainer and you need to bill more time, right? So it's a scope expectations conversation. And chances are that if that's happening during the engagement, what I'm not going to try to solve, but just some ideas for you, Michael, of a place to think about is upfront. Could there be a conversation as upfront in the contract or could there be an opportunity to even change the model to a value pricing or a fixed fee model, something to the effect. But there are a lot of things that that could definitely show up that could make the conversation awkward or uncomfortable, and that's definitely one that's very common. Pricing a job for new clients based on client's budget versus your budget. And Jeff, that could be true. What could also be true is, maybe the 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 price that you charge shouldn't necessarily have to adapt to the client's budget. Maybe the scope can adapt to the client's budget, and being able to articulate the value that you bring. But yeah, that is definitely a challenging conversation to have because there is a disagreement on price. There's a disagreement on value. The client sees you worth this much when you're trying to articulate that your work, it cost, the investment is more than that. So how do you close that gap so the client can feel comfortable to make the extra investment? So that's definitely a challenging conversation. Getting people to think proactively rather than reactively. So Ciaran, if you want to expand, but if I were to guess, is rather than them coming to you last minute saying, I need these reports, or, waiting for deadline to submit all their stuff, and all of a sudden, everything is urgent and everything is important. I'm guessing that's kind of maybe where you're going. But if you want to expand on that, I'd love to see if you can share more what you mean by getting people to think proactively. And then Cole saying charging more when a client's ask you to do things outside of scope. So my suspicions were true, right? Out of scope tends to be a big piece. But here are a couple other examples. Client is unresponsive in uploading docs. I'm certain that many of you probably have a few of those that drag their feet. You send them reminders. I need your docs. I need your docs. First conversation, you're like, sure, we can get started. Just go ahead and you give them a checklist. And they give you a random picture of a 1099 and a second random picture of another thing that's unrelated, that's got like a coffee stain on it and a picture of their feet on the bottom of it. And you're like, no, this is not what I'm asking for, right? Like it's and it could be very, very frustrating, right? So we got scope creep. Well, what about bad news? What if, you know that there's something that happened that now the client needs to understand that maybe there is an additional tax penalty, or, they got a letter in the mail about something related to their business, and you have to explain to them that, whatever the expectation was is no longer what it really is. Or what if you're also working and there's a third party accountant that made an error? Now you have to manage that awkward conversation where you're not necessarily blaming, but you need to help them understand that there's an error that happened and we need to find a solution for it. Or you have to increase your price. Or maybe you have someone in your team or even a vendor. And I don't want to throw Paychex under the bus, but what happens if you did recommend a partner referral and the partner doesn't follow up or set up a meeting with the client? Not that that would ever happen with Sean, because Sean is awesome, but that definitely is one of the reasons why I'm sure a lot of accountants are hesitant to give referrals. Sean, something for you to think about is because what happens if I do give you the name and number and you don't call them? Or what happens if their experience is poor? It's a reflection on the accountant as the referring partner. So there are a lot of all these things that could show up as critical conversation. What if you told your client, stop charging things on your personal credit card for the 10th time, and they keep on doing business expenses on their personal credit? They commingle funds, and you're like, oh my God, how frustrating is that, right? Or you get one of those clients who are, I'm in the bank trying to get a business loan and I need these reports ASAP, so that whatever. And you're like, you never told me that this was happening. And why all of a sudden do I have to put you on the top of the list when I got all these other clients doing these kind of things? Critical conversation, right? Client blames you for a mistake you didn't make. That could happen, right? In their mind, their perspective, like you should be the one that knows everything that's going on with the numbers. They have these unrealistic expectations of you. Prospect says, let me think about it. If you're in a sales situation, after you sent the proposal, after you went over an hour, their books, their situation, their frustration, you listen to them, you make the proposal, and now they kind of just wave you off with a let me think about it. That could be frustrating. And also you're like, rather than saying, okay, let me know, could you say something different to influence, to stay in the game in the conversation. Or if you sent the proposal and now the customer's dragging their feet. And Sean, you're probably taking notes because you're like, yeah, some of these apply to me too, right? Because it's not just in accounting.
Yeah.
Prospect gives you the objection, you're too expensive. Kind of a common scenario that shows up in other places. We talked about how to set boundaries with clients if they're calling you after regular hours. Or how do you present a new service, which you know requires for them to upgrade what they're doing with you because they're just doing more work. You're doing more work for them, but you're not getting paid for it. But then you don't want to come off as salesy, right? Maybe you know that client needs tax advisory. Maybe you know that they need quarterly or monthly reports. Maybe you know they need something else because it will benefit them, but you don't want to come off salesy. That's something I've heard a lot. Or setting expectations on communication and turnaround times so that there aren't any of those unexpected, I need this today or else, empty threats that they say, I'm going to leave you for someone else or whatever. Or if you're changing billing methods, you're changing client portals. So we can have an entire laundry list of this. The point is, there are a lot. There are a lot of critical conversations. And the second point is if you're not ready to know exactly what to say or what to ask or how to show up for these with the right intentionality, chances are you're going to continue to get the results that you're currently getting. So if you're looking to transform the kind of relationships that you really want to have towards, clients who are compliant to your process, clients who will pay you what you're worth, clients who will call you within business hours, that understands when, challenging situations are happening, that you're there equipped to be able to serve them and, with the utmost professionalism, and you're minimizing that friction and that awkward, interaction that leads to resentment or being overworked and being underpaid and being overwhelmed constantly, so that you could take vacations with ease without having to worry that you got to always be looking at the work because there's always a deadline looming over your shoulder. And so if you master these critical conversations, it will significantly transform the way you run your business. So what I want to introduce to you is a couple of things. First, the things that they could say to you. Again, if you're the kind of person that wants to take a screenshot or a picture of this, I'll go ahead and give you a few. I thought I sent those already. Shouldn't take long. It's just one more thing. I assumed that was included. Wait, I owe how much? That's not what my previous accountant said. Trigger warning, friends. I know that some of these things are probably making you cringe right now. These are the things you're hearing people say. But I've been paying the same rate for years. I thought you guys were handling that. I know it's the weekend, but it's urgent. Why can't I just pay you when it's done? I ran it by my cousin and he said it's different. Have your cousin do it, right? It makes you want to kind of go sassy on them, right? I need to submit this to the bank today. I'm being penalized because you missed something. Little gaslighting there. Gotta love that. This all sounds good. I just need to think it over. I've just been busy and haven't had a chance to look at it. I'm not sure if this fits in my budget right now. I thought this would be done by now. Right? So understand what are the things you need to hear for so that you can prepare how to respond with grace. And it's hard, right? Because you got to take a quick breath. They're saying all of this from a place of pain, from a place of frustration. They're not saying it towards you. They're saying it towards it. It being their frustration, it being the problem, it being the solution that they want. You just happen to be in the middle of it because you are the key for them to get it solved. So let's talk a little bit about magic words. How do we, now that we know that these are the problems that exist in our world, these are the critical conversations, these are the things that they say to us on repeat. Why are magic words so powerful? So magic words are actually sequence of specific kind of words that you can leverage in specific conversations so you can communicate more effectively. What you're actually doing is you're tapping into the person's subconscious when you're communicating. It's not manipulation in any way. It's called influential language. It's because what you're trying to do is you're trying to be more precise with how you want to communicate your intent without involving the ego, but instead generating more curiosity and more empathy. Because the key ingredient to building trust with anyone is helping them feel safe in a conversation. The only way you can generate that sense of safety without offering anything that makes them seem like you're threatening them is by not using threatening language, right? If you're going to respond to that kind of language with the same type of language, like you and me and this and that, and sassy language or just unfiltered language, then the other person will always feel they're under threat. When someone's under threat, they're going to get defensive. When they get defensive, it's hard for them to be open and willing to listen and to collaborate or try to work with you on finding a solution. Where instead, what we want to try to do is stay in a place of what's called curiosity. Because if we can be curious about where they're coming from, what they mean by what they're saying, or understand the context of what's their motivation behind what it is they're saying. And then if we can show a little bit more of empathy, which is just feel what they're feeling, care about what they care about, then what they might respond with is, oh, wow, this person is willing to listen. This person's being patient. They want to understand my problem, right? They're willing to, not immediately just react to what I'm saying, which then helps kind of take them down a notch more into neutral mode and makes them now open and willing and vulnerable and now willing to take your lead because communication is leadership. And the best leaders are those who are willing to be vulnerable, the ones who are willing to say, I don't know everything. And this is not about me being right and you being wrong. It's about me being curious enough to understand what is happening and how can I help you get to the desired outcome you're looking for. So magic words speak to the subconscious. Subconscious has like it's like a little computer. When we use the right codes and we use the right words to speak to that, you're helping accelerate someone make a decision. And there's only two outputs. There's a yes output and a no output. The problem is with a lot of people, why people are scared of making decisions is because they're indecisive. They're not confident. They don't feel safe. They don't feel like they've gotten the information that they need. You've ever left a conversation, maybe in a sales conversation, and you were like ready, ready, ready to maybe to buy a car, to buy a big thing, to buy a big purchase. And like your friend or your spouse or family member goes, so how did it go? Or maybe a job interview or maybe a client, and you left it and you didn't go through with it. And they said, you say, I didn't go through with it. I didn't buy the thing. I didn't take the job. I didn't take the client. I didn't do it. And they ask you why. And you say, I don't know. I just wasn't feeling it. Right? There's something in your body that's communicating to you, whether you feel like you're threatened or you're feeling like you're safe with making a decision. Magic words help you create influence by communicating language that makes others feel safe, they feel smart, and they feel capable of making a decision without having to second guess themselves. So I'm going to share what a few of those magic words are. Okay. We talked about wanting to move a client mostly from what's called an undesired state because people are motivated by several different things. They're motivated towards wanting something they want. They're also motivated by running away from something they don't want, right? Like, I need someone to clean up my books because I don't want to have to pay IRS penalties. They're running away from something they don't want, right? I want to have clarity in my numbers because if I know exactly how much profit I'm making in every product, then I can make better decisions so I could be more profitable. They're running towards something they want. And then the third reason why a lot of people do things, what motivates people, it's because it's a greater purpose. It's something that makes their heart sing, right? I want to do this because I want to help people. I want to do this because I want to feed the world. I want to do this because I feel like the accounting industry deserves to be rebranded and, to be paid what they're worth. Whatever that reason is, it's a greater motivator beyond I want to run towards something or I want to run away from something. It's because of a greater purpose. So what we really want to try to do is use this language to move them away from the current undesired state into a desired future state. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of what ineffective communication is versus how to use exactly what to say. So one of the ways that a lot of people think selling is by just telling someone what they should do, right? Has anybody ever said the words, you know what you should do? You should do this. You know, one day I was getting my haircut months ago, and I had a barber who like is a barber slash realtor slash Bitcoin, foreign exchange trader slash he's a slasher. Okay. And I'm in the middle of cutting my hair. He's like, hey, finance. You know what you should do? You should join this thing, but it pays you 10% per month or whatever. And immediately I got so turned off. I felt so like you're trying to push something on me. And the words that triggered me were the words should, because this is a joke that I say is no one likes to be shoulded on, right? So you shouldn't should up all over people either, right? Stop shooting all over people. So the one word you want to eliminate from your language that's the least influential is the word should, unless a client gives you permission to give them direction. But if you haven't earned the right to make a recommendation, that's an ineffective way to do it. And I think subconsciously, unintentionally, we might be saying this to a lot of people. We're not realizing the impact that it's having. What I want to share is an alternative way to say it, is asking how open-minded are you about exploring different ways to help you get caught with your books. And why is this more effective? Because instead, what I'm inviting is the person to explore the possibility without pressuring them. Because if you walk into a room and you ask, how many of you consider yourself open-minded? Raise your hand. You'll probably see 90% of the room raise their hand. There's always a couple of skeptical weirdos out there that'll be like, I don't know what you're trying to do to me. But most people like to see themselves as open-minded. So by using the phrase open-minded, you're immediately gaining advantage of having higher probabilities to get someone to potentially say yes to whatever it is you're going to recommend. How open-minded are you about exploring different ways to help you get caught up with your books? Well, that's their desired state, right? You're getting them towards that future desired state. So by saying how open-minded, rather than you should definitely work with us, you're putting someone in a corner saying they have to go to you. So this is how you communicate effective, non-threatening, inviting language. And this is how you influence conversations to make them flow a lot easier. Let's say we talked about why it works. So reduces resistance, puts the client in control, encourages engagement. So this is one of the main phrases that's considered what's called a rejection-free opening. Would you be open-minded to? How open-minded are you to X, Y, or Z? So Sean, I'm going to put you on the spot since you're, sharing the stage with me. If you
Yeah.
were to think about introducing Paychex, now that you know this new magic phrase, how would you present the open-minded question? Thinking about wanting to introduce an appointment or introduce a demo or introduce something new to a potential client. What could that sound like?
How open-minded are you to having a conversation about some of the tax credits that might be available to you right
I love it.
now?
I love it. Great job, man. Awesome. So for those of you who are in the chat playing along, could you type a open-minded question, whether it's how open-minded or would you be open-minded? So let's see if we can play a little bit with that idea. Go ahead and type in the chat an open-minded kind of question. Think about a client you want to upsell something to, a potential client you want to even just invite them to a conversation about reviewing their existing services. If you want to invite them to revisit the proposal, if you want to invite them to talk about your communication expectations, if you want to invite them about looking at the proposal again, like think about an existing client that you need to talk to. You got to get them to say yes to something. Start with the phrase, would you be open-minded to, or how open-minded are you to? Let's give it a couple minutes to see what anyone would type in the chat. And even if you are in accounting or not in accounting, whatever's relevant to your context, go ahead and type it in the chat. I'd love to see if we're already getting some folks implementing some of the lessons already taught here. We'll give that a minute. But Sean, have you heard this phrase before? And have you ever leveraged it yourself?
Heard it before. I have not, I don't think I've leveraged it as much as I should. I don't should on people. But I may say something to the effect of, how do you feel about having a conversation about, the payroll that you're using or the benefits that your employees have? Whereas just switching that word to open-minded
Hmm.
changes the framework of it,
Yeah.
to get them feel more open and like you said right there, it puts them in control more, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And then again, you could also shorten it by saying open. You don't always have to say open-minded. Would you be open to a conversation next week about ways you
Yeah.
could benefit, learn about tax benefits, whatever that would look like? So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide while we wait for those who want to type in their open-minded phrase, their version of it, because I know it takes a little bit for that to show up in the chat. But I'm going to give you another one. When you get a client that says, let me think about it, ineffective way. Okay, take your time. Let me know when you're ready. What's a better way you could say it? Is you could say something like, hey, before you make up your mind, would it help to go over what's holding you back so I can provide more clarity? What I've actually communicated to the subconscious here is by saying, before you make up your mind, is that you're willing to acknowledge and accept that maybe they haven't fully made up their mind, but that you have something interesting to offer. You're creating what's called a curiosity gap. Like before you make up your mind. And then again, instead of you being aggressive by saying, I'm going to go over this with you, you're saying, would it help if? You're creating a condition where you're asking them, would this be helpful to making up your mind if I introduce new information that can give you the clarity that you need to make a decision? I'm not pressuring you. What I want to try to do is provide you with clarity, because maybe the reason why you need to take your time to think about it is because maybe you need clarity on something, or maybe you need to run it by a partner, or maybe you need to take a look at your priorities in your business, whatever that is. What you're trying to do is you're trying to what's called stay in the game and not let the conversation die right then and there. You're asking for small permission to be able to kind of like unpack why they want to take their time when they say, let me think about it. Another magic phrase that I love is one of my favorite ones of all time. It's a very simple one. Are you all ready for it? Just out of curiosity. You can literally ask any question that you want if you just put the phrase just out of curiosity in front of it, and it won't come off as accusatory, right? You won't come off as like you're questioning them or judging them. I'll give you an example. Sean, you're going to go ahead and give me this objection. I need to think about it. Let's pretend you are an accounting professional, and I just presented to you a payroll solution, and you say, hey, you know, Carlos, I just really need to think about it. Go ahead and give me that objection.
Yeah, so Carlos, at this time, I really just need to think about it.
Thank you for sharing that with me, Sean. Just out of curiosity, what is it you need to think about?
So I have a partner. I
It's
have,
fine. We'll finish
okay,
it there, right? We're not gonna do a whole role play.
okay.
But did you notice that you didn't feel attacked?
Yeah,
Immediately, your mind went into giving me all the reasons, right? You started going, well, this, well, that, well, the other. But if I were to say, you say, let me think about it, go ahead and say, let me think about it.
let me think about it.
What do you need to think about? You see the difference?
Yeah.
The first one is like
Like,
inviting. I'm vulnerable. I don't know what you know. I'm curious, right? The second one is I'm questioning what you need to think about.
oh,
So that's why these words are called magical, because what you're trying to do is build safety, non-threatening language through curiosity and empathy. Okay, we got a couple of things in the chat from Cole and Michael. Thank you, friends. How open-minded are you to exploring additional strategies to save money on taxes? Are you open-minded? I love this. Are you open-minded to pay for software to reduce manual input, which will decrease time required in the data? This is awesome. You guys are on it. Yeah, those are great examples. Great examples. But now you're getting the gist of it, right? All you just need to do is know in the right moments, could you use some of this language just so it's more welcoming, it's more inviting, rather than being like a little bit confrontational, unfiltered. It could be interpreted as like judgy or like it's sometimes not as effective. And I'll give you again, so before you make up your mind, would it help? Keeps the conversation open, provides an opportunity to address objection, encourages a decision without pressure. And that's the thing. We want to try to lead people to make decisions because they came up with the idea, not you're pressuring them to do it. So this is pressure-free language. Here's the last one I have. IRS isn't as bad as you think. You just have to deal with it, right? Like clients are always giving you the fear of the IRS, and you're just like, you just have to deal with it. It is what it is, right? But instead of you could say, how would you feel if you no longer had to worry about the IRS letters or bank levies hanging over your head? It maybe present an IRS resolution strategy for them. You're shifting your focus to relief instead of fear. You're creating an emotional connection. You're encouraging the client to imagine a positive outcome. So selling or conversational selling or just conversations overall, it is a leadership trait. You're leading, it's change management. You're trying to help people manage through change, especially if you're an accounting professional that's helping people navigate through a lot of these fears, these anxieties, these uncertainties. Our role is to kind of stay patient, stay curious and empathetic, where we're asking these deep questions and we're helping them arrive to the decision making, but you're creating safety and pressure-free environment for them to feel comfortable to be able to make these decisions, knowing that you are on their side. I like to call this a lot is on your side language. I'm on your side. Let's look at the problem together. It's not you versus me. It's you and me versus it being the problem we want to solve. Okay. So, being that we have a little bit of time left, I'm going to introduce to you one more phrase that I really love. It's another rejection free opener. Again, we want to do this with the idea of being curious because we don't want to try to come off salesy, but this phrase can be really helpful when you want to introduce something new to anyone. And in the book, Exactly What to Say, which we have the accounting edition. This is the Reframe accounting edition. We've worked with the author to be able to help make a custom edition that will have accounting examples. So for those of you who are interested, I know Sean may have sent a few of to you your way, but if you're interested, I'll share with you a little bit how you can go deeper in this work. But the first phrase is, I'm not sure if it's for you. And I love it because what you're trying to say here is, hey, I'm not sure if it's for you, but rather than saying, you know what you should do? You know what you should do? You should do this, right? Or, are you interested in, like nobody really likes to kind of start with that because there's pressure there. By saying, I'm not sure if it's for you, you're immediately removing pressure. You're already showing that you are comfortable with being rejected. But you're actually, I don't want to say you're rejecting them first, but you're saying you're not sure. You're not sure if it's for them. And by also saying, I'm not sure if it's for you, the little voice in their brain, which is their subconscious, actually says, I'll be the judge of that. Let me be the one to know what is and what isn't for me. Like, who are you to tell me what is or what isn't for me? So you're creating a little friendly challenge for them to stay curious about whether it is or isn't for them. So you're creating what's called a curiosity gap. And then by actually just saying it, being vague, it even fuels that curiosity even more, which makes them want to say, well, what is it that you want to share? So this is a way to drive attention in something you're about. It's like a buildup, right? You're trying to drive attention towards what this is. If you actually go to YouTube and you search most of the videos that the algorithm, puts in your search, you'll notice things like 4 things that I hate about X. That's actually done purposefully for you to click on it because you're like, I need to know what the four things are, right? These are headlines and titles that are, uh, they are built in the neuroscience to create curiosity, right? I spent $10,000 on X and you won't believe what happened next, right? You're like, I need to know what happened next. You're creating curiosity. All of these are strategies to tap into the subconscious to create that curiosity gap. And so this is used the same way. Again, it's about being effective and doing it with a positive intent. Right here, the goal is for you to create curiosity and build their attention. So then when you present the next thing, you say, but as you know, when you use the word but in any sentence, you're negating everything else that you said before it. So the attention of the brain pays attention to what you're about to say next. Sean, dude, you're a good guy. I love you. You're awesome. But what's your little brain going to do? It's going to pay attention to everything you said about the but. Doesn't matter how great I said all the compliments. Like you had a manager and they say, hey, I love that you show up on time. I love that you do the works. I love that but your brain is immediately going to go, what's the negative thing? What we're actually doing here is opposite. We're starting with the negative and then the but becomes the positive. I'm not sure if it's for you, but I have this new, tax advisory services that, helps business owners get up-to-date reports and strategies for them to maximize their taxes. Da, 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 da. Would you be open-minded to maybe exploring that potential opportunity? Now I'm combining magic words. I'm not sure if it's for you. Would you be open-minded? So this is all about how do you show up in your conversations with the right intent. So, friends, thank you for hanging out for the last 52 minutes. For those of you who want to learn how to get better with the work of exactly what to say, as I mentioned to you before, I partner with my brother Hector. We're part of Reframe, the wonderful community that is intended to elevate accounting professionals, whether it's through communication, pricing, confidence. We have a great online community of folks who are interested in working on themselves. And if you were here today, you're probably one of those folks who are interested and maybe open. So I'm not sure if it's for you, but how open-minded would you be to learning more about Reframe? And if you are, you can go to www.reframeaccounting.com to learn more about who we are, what we do. I typed it in the chat so you can explore. And if you want to go deeper with the work, we have an entire an online course with the book with role play cards that actually like help you practice how to use and how to get better at your daily communication so you can be a lot more influential. You get these little cards in the mail that help you kind of use these and practice with others. And you've got the key phrases with the neuroscience along with the book and an implementation guide that Hector and I built. So with that, thank you everybody for staying along. I'm actually going to go ahead and turn it to Sean, who's going to talk a little bit about ways to partner with Paychex. So Sean, I'll turn it over to you. You're on mute now.
Thank you, Carlos. Okay, so yeah, I mean, most of you guys know, and we've had many conversations, but just briefly, I wanted to talk about some of the ways that uh, accountants, bookkeepers can partner with Paychex. There's four main ways that we partner with tax professionals and advisors. We do have a referral program when referring Paychex. We understand that your reputation is on the line, so it's not something that we take lightly. We understand how important your clients are, and we try to act as an extension of you and your firm as we engage with them. So that's one of the ways that we partner with professionals. The other way is we do have